So let me welcome you wholeheartedly on behalf of the International School of the Rosycross for joining this event tonight. It's the first live webinar of the International School of the Golden Rosycross, more specifically of the Golden Rosycross online and worldwide community. The Golden Rosycross in general tries to reach out to all those people on our globe, no matter where they reside, who want to know who the Rosicrucians are, what their philosophy is, and how they live. Sorry, I have to admit every now and then someone. Because this school exists for that purpose, to help all those who experience that soft calling voice from within that constantly draws your attention. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it fails. The school tries to make you aware of the reality of this voice from within. The school teaches you where it has its roots and how you can learn to understand the teachings that this voice conveys to you. Because you have all the knowledge of the universe right there within you, from where this soft voice is calling you. The Golden Rosycross is a Gnostic spiritual school which points to the fact that we believe that man or woman is a twofold being, mortal as well as divine. All our inner, as the school, and outer activities are based on that one principle, which exists from the dawn of times. So first of all, let me introduce myself to be welcoming you. My name is Tanya. I'm in Amsterdam currently, and I will be your host tonight, taking care of you, just being there at the background to see that we have a smoothly running webinar. My co-host, moderator is André de Boer. You see him with the blue screen. André, say something.
Thank you, Tanya, for the nice introduction and for the invitation to be a co-host today. I've never been there, so I have to learn.
So we're here in the tryout mode. So what you notice is that when someone is speaking, he will be highlighted by a yellow window. So when you have many people on screen, you automatically know who will be talking at that moment. But most importantly, Neto from Brazil, our video lecturer, we would like to wholeheartedly welcome you to be here for this live Q&A so that everybody has the opportunity to give or submit you the questions that they all have cropped up there from watching your video, your latest video on Spiritual Christmas. So welcome, Neto.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And welcome, of course, you all participants. We have for tonight, before we start, we have some rules, some webinar rules. We will try to keep the webinar within the hour, maybe a bit longer, but we try to keep it within the hour. You can submit all your questions. It makes it more feasible for us to manage your questions, but also it's more harmonious to the other attendants to submit your questions by chat. If you look down in your toolbar, you have the chat option. So whatever question you have, please pop them up over there. André will pick them up from there and combine them. And André will invite one of you to submit your question to Neto directly. So André will invite me or Joseph or Mariana, whoever, to say, okay, come up with your question. And of course, Neto is there to answer them. But please don't, it will not be manageable if we just come up with the questions speaking out loud. Please mute yourself, but you already have done that if there's background noise, because it will interfere badly with the others. If you go to your screen and you see at your top right, you have speaker view, the option to choose for speaker view or gallery view, whatever you like. So when you choose speaker view, you will see me And if you choose go back to gallery view, you will see all the others. It's up to you, your preference. If there are more than 25 guests available at this webinar, we will be using 2 screens. You can use your arrow up, arrow down to go from the one screen to the other. The meeting is being recorded, and we're recording now, as it was indicated in your invitation and registration. If you have troubles with that, which we can imagine, please, you can control your own video, you can control your own microphone. If you don't want to be recorded, then switch off your camera and your microphone. Your names will not be on display in the recording. Furthermore, we will make a chat transcript from all the questions that you submit that will be saved. So if there are questions left after the webinar, we will be discussing them in another meeting, in another situation, maybe on the platform, the Golden Rosycross community, but we will come to that later. Well, this was it. It's as short as I could get it. I would like to, I see questions coming in already. I would like to give you the word, Netu, for you. It's your stage and yours. So enjoy your evening.
Well, friends, first of all, thank you for this fantastic opportunity to be here with all of you today. It's really, you know, the central point of the work of the School of the Golden Rosycross to openly share and, you know, talk about our experiences on the spiritual path. So that's the purpose of this very informal and open conversation this morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the time of the day it is for you. We hope that you have had a chance to see the video that we posted at the end of December that talked about spiritual Christmas and the secret of inner alchemy. We are, you know, prepared to talk about that, but you know, it doesn't mean that if you have other questions about the work of the spiritual school or the spiritual path in general, that we shouldn't address those questions, because what really matters is that we talk about what is, you know, fundamental in your inner quest. That's what matters. And to that purpose, we are here as friends, willing to share our experiences. I'm a pupil of the school of the Golden Rosycross for, I think, close to 40 years. You know, I found the school, you know, when I had a lot of hair and they were not gray. But it means that, you know, we are all in our lives, you know, in different moments, in different situations, seeking for the fundamental questions, for the fundamental answers for the fundamental questions. So that's what's all about. We are all pupils in the school. We are all learning. We are all working, you know, to learn with ourselves and with the group. And when we talk about the school, that's the basis that we try to use and to share. So the floor is yours, and we are really glad to welcome your questions, all of them. Feel free.
There are no questions yet in the chat, so please, if you have a question, write it down in the chat, please.
Maybe wants to just come up with a question without typing it.
There is a question, is this a Q&A session? The answer is yes, this is a Q&A session. I thought it's a talk seminar. That's a comment by Bonnie.
Yeah.
Maybe
well,
you can explain something more, Bonnie. You can
or if you want, we can convert that into a talk seminar quite quickly. I mean, you know, just give us a question and we can elaborate on that for the rest of the night until you're ready to poof. Huh? Okay. But
Bonnie, can you hear? Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
can I ask a question? I've never understood it properly. What is the Elohim? Is it the same as the Holy Seven Spirit or something different? The creators of this world.
The Elohim, which is a kind of a generic description of the deity, meaning the group entity or the multiple entity, deity. It represents the creating powers of the universe. You know, in all the traditions, we tend to associate those aspects with you know, an anthropomorphic approach. So you know, the gods were associated with, you know, super powerful beings, right? But you know, one way to see that is that the universal, symbolically speaking, the divine intelligence is present in every particle in the universe. Because in every particle of the universe, you have the three powers or three forces acting all together. You have energy, you have matter, and you have consciousness. So if you put that into quantic terms, very modern quantic terms, in everything that is manifested in the universe, you have energy, you know, flowing back and forth into matter, and the you know, the aspect of consciousness that interacts with that unfolds gradually all the potential of the universal intelligence that is embedded in absolutely everything that is manifested. So that's one way to see that, you know, in a very simple, direct, and close way to us, so that we don't, you know, think too much of, you know, external and things that are, you know, removed or far away from us, but they are inside of us. They are part of us, and we are part of everything. And another aspect that we should take into consideration is that, you know, our consciousness sees itself when it looks at the world. So we are projecting a mirror or an image of ourselves and seeing that image in the mirror of the universe or the mirror of the world. So when we talk about the seven spirits, right, we are actually seeing a mirror of ourselves with the seven centers of activities or seven centers of energy that we carry in our being. So, you know, as the same way that light goes through a prism, and you tend to see the number of colors that your consciousness can recognize, that universal light or that universal power is coming through us and, you know, unfolding itself according to our own image and our own state of consciousness. That's why we can see, that's why we can see that you know, the seven spirits are actually a mirror of our own organic structure. So you know, it's nice and it's okay to think about those aspects as, you know, extremely you know, sublime and distant aspects from us. But one very effective way to look at all that is to look at ourselves. And to conclude this comment on your question, and I think it was Andrew that brought this up, we can understand that, you know, that way we can understand why the Rosicrucians of the Renaissance insisted on the idea that the human being is a microcosm. Because if we look at ourselves and we understand that we carry the perfect image of all the universe in ourselves, and we reflect that image back into the universe, then we have the key to understand that as it is above, it is below, as it is outside, it is also inside, just like Hermes Trismegistus would say. I hope this helped a little bit.
Thank you, Neto. I have another question. It relates to the last one, and it's about the holy breath. It's from Julia. Maybe, Julia, you want to explain it a little bit more?
I think I'm asking for an explanation, really. I think it's the last but one, Spiritual Christmas readings. We have a narrative and then there's a reading. And it talked about the holy breath being, just being there. And
I cannot hear.
Sorry. Is the holy breath equivalent to something like the Holy Spirit? What is that? What is meant by it? What is meant by the holy breath?
You are referring to the readings of the texts of the Spiritual Christmas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can give you some elements, but Andre, if you want to add anything to that, please feel free, and also Tanya. The spirit in many. Shall I go on? Yeah. Okay. One way to see that aspect, Julia, is the spirit is associated with the breath. And the breath that gives life to matter, right? The spirit and matter, or the holy breath, or the Holy Spirit, and matter itself, or the mother, or manifestation, they are the two poles of the one absolute power when it is divided. So the absolute one has the spirit and matter in it, undivided. That's why, for example, the Chinese would call this absolute the Tao or the Tao, right? Because it's the entire manifestation before it is manifested. But for this universal power to be able to manifest itself, it must open up, just like a rose that starts blossoming, right? And the two aspects that are absolutely undivided and intertwined in that initial absolute one are the Father, Mother, or the Spirit, Matter, or Spirit or ideation, and Matter and manifestation. And
of the goal.
So maybe those that are not asking questions, if you could mute your mics, because we can hear an echo, right? So when those two aspects, they become manifested, just like in the Chinese mandala, right? Well, where you can see one field and the other field absolutely in harmony and in full cooperation. And from the center of that manifestation field, you can see the other aspect of apparently the reversed pole of that manifestation already as a seed of a new aspect of manifestation or movement. Then you can understand that it is an absolute dynamic aspect of the breath and of the Spirit, or the Holy Breath and the Holy Spirit, to be in constant interaction with matter. But what's also really important here, because we tend to look at those realities as if they were outside of us, like the Spirit and the Holy Breath outside of us, and the original matter or the original substance of the universe outside of us, but it's all in us. We are made of that, because in those two, there is a reflection of a third one. And this brings us to the very classic triad of the Father, Mother, Son, right? Or, for example, like in Egypt, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And the third force represents the consciousness. And the consciousness in those two is a mirror of the absolute one. That's why, for example, one of the reasons why the figure that we know externally and historically as Jesus, right? But that in the school we understand is a consciousness, is a human consciousness that has achieved a level of freedom that sees from outside of the boundaries of the limitation of egocentricity and time and space and everything else that is right here. So that's why that consciousness says the Father, the absolute Father, and me, we are one. And at the same time, you see the images of the Father and the Mother in the Holy Supper, in wine and bread, just like it's a different setting of the Chinese mandala, but it's really this holy breath is the ideation power that is in absolute unity and full manifestation with matter. So that's one way to view that. So Andre and Tanya, if you want to add anything, feel free, please.
I think this is a nice explanation. It's a little abstract. The next question is more concrete, I think. It's a question from Joseph Carusa, and he asked, well, maybe he can ask his question about the new attitude of life. Joseph.
Mm-hmm. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. It's not necessarily from the talk on spiritual Christmas, but something I've come across in the literature about the fivefold gnosis, hearing about the new attitude to life. And I'm wondering, sometimes the way I see these fivefold gnosis, it seems like they have to just naturally awaken. And I'm wondering if there's a way to practice. So what is the new attitude to life? And if there's a way to practice that now.
Mm-hmm. Was that Joseph, right, that asked the question?
Yes.
Yeah. So Joseph, here we are offering you perspectives, right? Because all those aspects of the spiritual path, they are multidimensional, just like the aspects of the universal teachings. So every answer that we offer is just one possible perspective that each one of us can share. We can listen to that, but we have to put all those elements in front of our inner tribunal. It's in front of the innermost seat of our own consciousness, and verify by ourselves how true that is for us in our own path. But this fivefold gnosis, right, that represents the transformation of the human consciousness. And in the language of the school, the human consciousness is also represented by the concept of soul. So the soul is this third force that unites spirit and matter. And that's why it's so important to transform the soul, because the soul, as the consciousness, is the only aspect in the entire universe that can change the way that the universal idea interacts with existence or matter. So the path to transform our consciousness goes through many different aspects, and it reaches attitude, right? We can understand a new attitude towards life as a change, an inner change in our predisposition, in our inner world and our inner predisposition in front of the reality of life. that is really fundamental in the teaching of the school. Because, for example, if we tried to change the way we act by counter actions, or by training, or by exercises, or by a list of things that we should or should not do, we would be changing just on the surface. And that transformation would last only up to the point that we reach reality again, and we are confronted with, the facts of life. And the facts of life normally require that we act as we are inside. So that's why an inner change must take place before an external change can happen. So that's why, in this 5 aspects of the consciousness or the soul, we first have to have an insight. And this insight normally comes from the deepest core of our consciousness, that is in connection with the center of our microcosm when it awakens in a certain moment of our lives. If that center of our consciousness, is awakened, then it starts to receive those direct impulses from the center of the universe that is everywhere, and so it is in us as well. And that insight starts to show us how our thoughts work, how our emotions work, and how the activity of our will or desire is in automatic pilot almost. So it's a true transformation of what we perceive or what we feel, and I'm pointing to the heart here, what we think in our minds, in our head. So based on that insight, we start to realize how our minds work from inside out. And also, like our behavior is filled with automatic reactions. And in the moment that this insight starts to, shed some light on it, and through a very, persistent process of self-observation without judgment, just to learn how your inner world truly works, you start to create a space in the 3 main centers of your consciousness, or the 3 main centers of your soul: your heart, your head, and your hands. And this creates some space inside of you. This space allows you to see how your inner predisposition works. And this space is a space of freedom that is conquered through self-knowledge, through self-observation, and no self-judgment. It's just a true learning process based on that, absolute insight that is the only possible basis. That space allows you to see how you work as a person, as a consciousness. And that space of freedom, starts as a consequence to change your inner predisposition. So the same problems, the same situations, the same repetitive, interactions that we might have with people or in the different roles of our lives, etc., they start to change. They start to change because our consciousness perceives them differently.
Maybe
and in the moment that...
Yeah. Sorry, maybe we can interfere because Bonnie is asking a question that relates strongly to your story. So maybe you can weave it in, let's say. So Andre, please, you can come up with, or Bonnie, you can come up with your question. You have to unmute yourself. Bonnie, where are you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Oh, hi, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was sending a question for when he finished later. I can wait for him to finish.
Oh, okay, but your question was beautiful because it's very essential to the teachings of the Golden Rosycross. So please come forward with your question.
Oh, so I'm not a member yet. So so this part is sort of pretty mysterious to me, because I was advised that we don't do the transformation through intellectual like, what's the word, exploration, or physical transformation like yoga or devotion. Well, I'm just very curious, or like I just don't know. It sounds like this is a very passive transformation. Once you are connected, things just happen on its own. Is this correct? And also, I have another question. It's I asked this question to a member, to a teacher here in New York, and he said like this question about yoga practice, and he said something like there is a danger to get exposed to something not very soul friendly if you do yoga. I asked that question at similar forum, so I didn't get a chance to ask him to elaborate. So when you are done with your talk, I would love to hear more about that.
Okay. Should I address that question directly, and then if we have time, we come back to the previous one?
Yeah, or you can.
I would love to hear what you're doing. I thought the chat is a way for people just to shoot questions for later. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. So I hope, Joseph, that we could share some elements on how the inner predisposition changes, and that's the meaning of attitude. And when your attitude changes, then your actions change. And that leads me to Bonnie's question. The spiritual teachings of the past, they came to us, or they reached us sometimes in the form of practices. So everything that we know in terms of exercises from the East, the West, and some religious practices and some other aspects, they are the external aspects of the spiritual teachings of those schools. But they are just like the transcript of a teaching that cannot be framed into words. And even in those teachings, right, those aspects, they were just the external manifestations of an inner transmutation. I'll try to give you two examples. Yoga, means union, means balance. And the inner sense of yoga, because you can also associate the 5 classic types of yoga, right, with the 5 transformation aspects of your own consciousness. What we were describing before, that you transform your insight, you transform the way you perceive your mind, you disconnect from automatic reactions, you change your inner attitude, and that transformation of your inner attitude as a consequence is a different action. We are talking about 5 aspects, right? And those 5 aspects are also you can see them in the classic 5 schools of yoga, just like Hatha yoga, Bhakti yoga, Raja yoga, Inanna yoga, and the 5th one escapes me. Okay, and that leads to the constant imperfection of men. But the meaning of that is that in the first place, you need to transform the way your consciousness works. And you cannot train your consciousness to be something different. You really have to put your effort. And you said, it gives me the impression that this is a passive path. Absolutely not. There is an intense and constant effort of the pupil in this path to remain absolutely aware and self-aware of how he's working or she is working inside. Because that effort to keep a connection with that source, that inside source that shows you how your inner world works, it is, you know, this light that can shed some clarity inside of yourself. So, you know, if you try to change the way you act with exercises and sitting in one position or breathing in another position or fixing your mind in one point or another, what you're trying to do is to change the outside or the external aspect of yourself without changing what is driving yourself from inside out. Another aspect, okay, so yoga is one. Another aspect is meditation. People ask us in the school, do you meditate in the school? And our answer is a bit strange because we say yes and no. And when we try to say yes to that part, we are referring to the original meaning of this Latin root of the word meditation, that is meditare, that means to stay in the middle or to be connected with the middle or the center. So in that term, or in those terms, we are trying to remain connected to the center, to the middle of our true being, our microcosm, all the time. So that is the effort of the pupil. But that is the true meditation in our understanding. Because if you try to use your egocentric mind to project it somewhere or to force upon it silence, you may end up just training your mind, training your egocentric awareness, and making it even stronger. So when people ask us, how do you become silent? Our most honest answer is you have to have the courage in the first place to listen to the noise. You have to be aware that you are filled with noise. And the noise is made of our unconscious thinking, our unconscious feeling, and our unconscious or subconscious desires. That's why, we understand in the school that the transformation begins from the innermost consciousness that we describe as the center of the microcosm, as the rosebud, as the lotus flower, as the mustard seed, all those fantastic symbols. When that is awakened, it touches our consciousness. And if our consciousness cooperates with it, then a next transformation takes place in our lives. I hoped it helped and it didn't complicate even more.
Thank you, Neto. I've another question from Bonnie. It's about the transformation of the consciousness. And she asked about devotion and reflection, self-reflection. Maybe, Bonnie, you'd like to explain it a little bit.
No, I actually, by devotion, I was just thinking the fifth type of yoga maybe was devotion, but I don't quite, when Andrew was talking about the 5 types, I was just thinking maybe the fifth one was devotion. But I thank you for the explanation. I totally get what you're saying. So the changes come from within is like a self-initiated. I mean, not like it's sort of like a self-inquiry and self-reflection. Is that correct? But you have to be somehow graced by the, for the lack of a better word, the universal consciousness. But I'm still quite not. But okay. But how? First of all, how do you get that? How do you get touched by that? Secondly, do you have to be quiet before you can get touched by that? So when you say the way to quietness is to go through the noisiness, how exactly is that done? Like, I think there are people who have gone through lots of reflection on their mind, through therapy, through, you know, creative writing, or whatever. It does not necessarily lead to quietness. Are there other things you can suggest for people to do, you know,
Yeah.
to
the first aspect of the path is self-knowledge. That's why, for example, the motto, know yourself and you will know the gods and the entire universe, is the motto of the city of Delphi in ancient Greece. And Delphi, as we know, was an initiation place, an initiation city. Just like Luxor, just like you know, Machu Picchu, and many other places like that in the past and also in the present. So self-knowledge is something that you must acquire by standing firmly on a different point of view. You talked about the universal consciousness, right? This central principle that we carry in ourselves, that is the center of our microcosm, the center of our entire being. Our ego cannot awaken the one, because you know, it is the one that should awaken us. Up to the point that we believe that our egocentric existence is the sole purpose of our lives, and we are trying to solve all of our problems in the boundaries or within the limits of our egocentric mind or egocentric awareness. You know, we are still, and this is a very simple term, but it's so eloquent, we are still egocentric. In other words, the center of the entire universe in our illusion or our self-illusion is our own ego. And that's the cause of suffering. That's what Buddha would try to explain by attachment. Because we believe that we are our thoughts. We believe we are our emotions. We believe we are our desires. We believe that the situations that we live in our lives define us. And we have to go through a long process of becoming mature. Becoming mature of the fact that the ego by itself cannot add meaning to his or her own life. And in the moment that we become so absolutely self-aware of the fact that our ego cannot be the center of the universe, this universal spark, this spirit spark, or the spiritual principle of consciousness, then it can touch the very innermost aspect of our understanding, of our identity, of our self. And then we become seekers of answers. You know, every single human being on this earth that has gone beyond the point of trying to merely fulfill his or her desires and dreams and beliefs and even you know, acquire possessions, material possessions, or maybe other sorts of possessions, right? Everybody that has gone up to that limit and has taken one step beyond, they are not being moved by their ego anymore, because they are being forced to walk outside of the boundaries of their egocentric consciousness. They are already touched by the universal principle. And what the school tries to say to everybody that is seeking for those answers, they are seeking for answers that they cannot even formulate the questions to. It's a very, you know, disconcerting process, because we are seeking for answers for things that we cannot even ask what it is that we are looking for. And that process is like a storm. It's like a magnetic storm. the center of our consciousness, the innermost aspect of our consciousness, is connected with the energetic center of our heart. The school calls it the rose of the heart, or the etheric heart, or the candelabrum of the heart. And that's one of the symbols that we see in many traditions. They are pointing to those fires that are within us, right? And as they are a kind of a magnetic construction, they look like a compass. You could see them as a compass. And up to the point that we are guided by our ego, it is as if the needle of the compass was pointing always towards the north of our egocentric desires, our dreams, our fantasies, our desires for things. But in the moment that we take that step up to the very limit, and that the universal principle awakens our consciousness, it is as if the compass of the heart went crazy. Because the logic, the binary logic of good and bad, this is what I want, this I don't want, this is good for me, this is not good for me, this is good, this is evil, because this is all created by our minds, by our consciousness. That doesn't exist in reality, right, outside of us. Then this binary logic of the ego is impacted, it's touched by a totally new magnetic framework of power. It is as if a new north, as a new sun with a totally new gravity is arising inside of us. And that creates a real storm, because, the compass of our identity starts to turn. And we turn in all directions and we cannot find answers. And we start to look for answers that we cannot find outside. We try, first of all, we look for those answers outside of us, up to the point that we realize gradually that the answers must be inside. And the real answer lies in the very axis of the compass, that should be able, if we connect to it, to reorientate, to give another north to this compass. And that's one of the meanings of that so nice quote of the universal consciousness that we see written in the gospel, that, not my will, but the higher will should be done. When we understand that, the purpose, the meaning, the sense of our lives is totally transformed. So it's really not exactly about what I should do, but who am I serving? Am I still serving my ego, or am I serving the universal principle in me? That's the constant question that the pupil in the path should ask himself or herself.
We are talking with each other 1 hour now, and there are some more questions, but maybe it's an idea to conclude this meeting at this time.
With this beautiful art, are you in for another question, Neto?
I'm in for the entire night here, but it's really up to the group. Maybe we can have another 1 or 2 questions, and we finish around a quarter past, because we started a little bit later, and then we finish around.
Joining in. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we don't want to leave yet.
Okay.
There's another question from Andrew, and it's about the ego consciousness, and he refers to The Voice of Silence, a nice book by Blavatsky. Maybe, Andrew, you can explain your question, please. And you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I was just looking for the mute button. Now I can see. Yes, one of my favorite books is The Voice of the Silence by Blavatsky, because that's really what we should be focusing on, and not the ego, which is a noisy inner being that if we observe, we go crazy. But Blavatsky says that if we've got two consciousness, one the ego consciousness, one the divine consciousness, which is our true consciousness, that she says that the two cannot exist together. But after I've listened to this, I'm going to the supermarket to get food and petrol and all the usual things, and I'm sure the divine consciousness is not really interested in what food I'm buying or that, So how can she say that? She's talking probably the end of the path, where the divine consciousness becomes our focus. But we seem to need this ego consciousness to get us to the supermarkets, to pay the electricity bills, to, book plane fares and all the rest of it, How can she say, we only need the divine consciousness is my question. Because there must be, if we're going anywhere, there must be an end to it. And the end seems to be this divine consciousness. Not my will but thy will be done, as you said, But we still need to buy groceries.
Yeah, and good ones. There is,
yes.
yeah, if possible. There's a very nice book from the founder of the school. He goes by the pen name of Jan van Rekenborg, and excuse my poor Dutch in front of my Dutch friends here. It's called The Coming New Man, and in the end of this book, he says that the pupil should not make a distinction between what appears to be ordinary life and the path. And he says that even if you are washing the dishes, you can be absolutely connected to, the inner core of this reality. It's a nice example because we tend to make divisions in our life. And one big division that really creates almost an unsurmountable hurdle inside of ourselves is to believe that our consciousness should be dissolved. The entire universe, or at least this tiny little planet that in the universal scheme of things is certainly, a grain of dust, but it's been working for billions of years to form, countless nuclei of consciousness. So the problem is not the consciousness. The problem is, it's not the ego itself, it's egocentricity. It is, the childish state of consciousness, just like when a child is born, that believes that his or her tiny little and beautiful body as a baby, is the same as the cradle, or that the mother is part of the baby. So, that childish aspect of our minds are the slayer of the real. When Blavatsky says the mind is the slayer of the real, and you have to slay the slayer so that you can get in contact with reality. It doesn't mean that you must kill your consciousness. It means that our minds should function differently. And the problem with the mind, it is attached to the thought process. And then we believe that there are, divine thoughts and mundane thoughts. But thought itself is neutral. And it's not judgmental. We just need to learn how it works. And in the moment we learn how it works and we are not attached to it, we gradually start to get free of egocentricity. And in the moment that we are free from egocentricity, we realize what was there in the first place. that is the absolute unity between the consciousness and the all consciousness, or the one consciousness, because there is only one consciousness in the entire universe. It is our consciousness that has built a wall around it and isolated itself from the entire universe. But in the moment that we become self-aware, we cannot reintegrate ourselves with the universe by eliminating our consciousness. That would be involution, and that door is closed to us. So the true path for the human consciousness is to become fully self-aware, free of egocentricity, and gradually reintegrated with universal consciousness. And in the moment that we live that way, even if it is for a tiny fraction of a split second, in that moment, there is no separation whatsoever between what we call life and the life, the universal life. And you can buy grocery, or you can drive your car. You can, do your job, and you can take care of your family or take care of others, and do everything that you need to do in your life. And at the same moment, in the very same moment, there is no separation and division in absolutely anything. I think we have time for another question, maybe?
Yes, there's another question from Bonnie. She writes, "Thank you very much, Nato. Could you say something about what happens to someone if they start the spiritual journey with the school, but stops the work for whatever reason?" Maybe Bonnie wants to add something to that. If you want to say something, Bonnie, you have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Well, this just like for a seeker who is, still looking for the right place that you resonate with. So that, I guess that's a question that always comes up, like when you are going to different spiritual magnets to try to find what resonate with you. So when I'm asking this because I think I've read somewhere, or maybe I heard somewhere, that it could be detrimental if you start the work with the school but stop. I just would like to hear what exactly that.
Have you ever camped in your life? Did some camping?
Yeah.
And tried to light a fire on your own without matches?
No.
Yeah. Well, if you try that, and I think that you'll understand that even if you didn't try that, to light up a fire in the forest without matches, you need one ingredient that is called persistence. Because, the sparks will not jump out of the two rocks alone. If you look at the spiritual path in a very simple way, it's very close to that situation. Those two rocks you can see as the universal principle. That is the main rock. The other rock is your consciousness. And you have to have a lot of dedication. You talked about dedication before. It's bhakti yoga, right? So if you really have, the dedication and the yearning, the real need to see the sparks, or to generate the sparks through the attrition of the self-knowledge process between your consciousness, your egocentric consciousness, and the one consciousness in yourself. So your heart and your mind, then the sparks may hit the leaves and the small branches of trees. that are our lives, our lives or our hands or our reality. So if we really want our consciousness to change its three aspects that we mentioned, our hearts, our minds, and our reality, our hearts, head, and hands, we must dedicate ourselves to that process. Because when there's real dedication there, right? And I mean the spiritual process with a capital S, right? That is the real inner process. Then, the sparks will finally become a small fire, and later on, our entire being will be, filled with that fire, with that light, and that heat that are the driving forces of an inner transformation. It's just like climbing a mountain. You cannot climb a mountain using 10 different paths. You have to choose a path and to pay the price to climb the mountain. And the paths in the mountain were not made for you to stop in the middle. They were made for you to climb the mountain until the very top. So, something to think about. Huh?
Well, I think that's a very good moment to conclude our tonight's Q&A session. And we have a question or an answer from Joseph, actually. Maybe Joseph, you come forward with it?
Well, I was just writing another question, but perhaps we're finished with that.
Yeah, we go. I think we're leaving it here for tonight, is it? Yeah, we're saving the chat anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Those were some answers. Netto, thank you very much for leading us upwards to the top of the mountain for tonight. Or maybe we're just halfway. But anyway, the School of the Golden Rosycross, we will continue to climb that mountain together with all those who want to do so. The next video launch will be on February 14 or 15. It will be announced, of course, on Karma. And the next webinar, the Q&A session after that one, will be held on February 21st, on a Thursday evening like this, same times. If you really want to know more and you can't wait until February 21st, you can go to the www.goldenrosycross.org, go to Inward Journey, join groups and join Inward Journey if you want to be on that inner journey, and that leads to that knowledge that is there right within you. You will find more information there. If you join another group on our platform, the Q&A group, you will be able to watch the recorded video, but also maybe the answers that we will give to the questions that are in the chat. If you go to that group and sign up for that group, you can communicate with each other, deepen yourself on the topics, and maybe Netto is available within that group to go deeper into questions. But this is a bit new to us as well, so we just find our best way of working. Leaves me now for thanking you guests for making this possible. Thank you, Andre, for moderating all the questions, and Netto for making such a marvelous evening for us. We sincerely hope to see you all soon, online, on the planet somewhere, and Netto, thank you for everything.
No, thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And see you soon. Okay. Bye now.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.